Welcome to Almost Pro, the sport podcast delivering you the untold stories from athletes who almost made it and the experts that guided them. I'm Laura, and I'm here with my co-host Francis, and today we are absolutely thrilled to welcome our guest, Phil Stewart. Phil's gymnastics journey began at just 5 years old, and by 14, he joined the Victorian Men's High Performance Centre. From there, he earned a sporting scholarship to the Victorian College of Arts Secondary School, training an incredible 30 hours a week. At 19, a serious trampoline accident left Phil with a broken neck, but instead of ending his career, it became a turning point. He fought his way back, making his international debut at 21, and became the first Victorian gymnast to land a highly difficult dismount in competition. Phil went on to compete on the international stage until the age of 26, and today he's the high performance coordinator at the State Gymnastics Centre in Prahran, Victoria. Phil's story is one of resilience, comeback victories, and proving your worth amongst the best. Phil, hello and welcome. We are so stoked to have you here today. What an incredible list of accomplishments. And I know Francis and I have literally been counting down the hours for this chat.
Hello, ladies. Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Hey, Phil, there are so many layers to your story that Laura's just introduced. And as you well and truly have worked out now, Almost Pro is about pulling it all apart. And so we want to hear all your pieces. But probably the best way to get us started is if you can take us right back to the start. Little Phil, what was your introduction to sport? What started all of your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as you touched on, I started gymnastics at the age of 5 years old. I have a mum who's heavily involved in sports psychology, and I had a father who used to work for the IOC, so quite a heavy sporting family. And I was this little kid who was jumping around the house, jumping off the stairs, and mum goes, "That's it, I need to get some energy out of you. Let's put you in gymnastics," because she had a client who was a gymnast. And then both my parents were actual runners quite professionally. So dad was a steeplechase runner, mum was a hurdler, and coincidentally, my sort of mid-range best event is 800 meters. So it's funny how genetics works in that way. But yeah, my parents were very cautious of putting me into athletics too young to avoid me from burning out. And so they're like, let's get him in gymnastics and then he can make the decision later on in life. But as it turns out, I never left gymnastics. So yeah, started at 5, small club in Mordialloc, close to where I lived. Very much recreationally, just enjoyed the foundations of the sport and so much it brings in terms of chasing skills and early development. So I really enjoyed that. Later on in life, I would say around about 9 or 10, I started getting a little bit more serious, started getting a bit more competitive. I then moved to a different club in Brighton where I trained for a couple of years. And then followed by that, I moved into a club in Dandenong called Grips International. And then I followed that journey again, making friendships along the way, learning the landscape, and then eventually was invited to have a trial at the Men's High Performance Centre in Prahran. And that was the club that I stayed with for the rest of my sporting career, effectively. But it was a very enjoyable experience. I wasn't sure if I was going to get in or if I was capable enough. I had a teammate who had just successfully entered and encouraged me to try as well. And it ended up being the best decision I ever made because those are the friends that I have still to this day, catch up regularly. And it was the sport that really created a foundation for my love for gymnastics and love for giving back to the next generation of emerging athletes.
Love it, Phil. I love it. Interesting, those sliding doors moments. Do you ever think about what life on a track might have been like?
Look, I definitely have an appreciation for running, and I do love getting out there and just putting some music on and going for a run. But look, I don't envy just ultimately just putting in lots and lots of Ks. And I look at my parents and their knees are a little bit sore. I'm like, oh, look, I think I've gotten out of that one. But at the same time, I also broke my neck in the sport. So yeah, things happen.
I mean, if you're going to weigh up the odds, a long-term knee injury or a broken neck, I'm not even sure I'm going to choose. I don't even know where my vote
that's
lands.
Right.
Hey, do you
That's
remember
right.
those early days of going in to a gymnastics centre as a little boy?
Absolutely. I certainly do. And I think it was good that it wasn't that high performance setting too early. I know a lot of clubs do sort of push for that high performance stream. And that's great if you get athletes who really enjoy the sport and can stick it out that whole distance, because it's a lifelong sport and it's a long journey, really, in terms of it's a 20 years just to get to that pinnacle potential. But I really enjoyed the enjoyment of it, the game side of things, chasing, as I said, chasing skills. It's one of those sports where there's always that next tier, there's always that next ceiling that you can achieve, because people are creating new skill. Again, like I said, it takes a long time to develop these fine motor skills to be able to achieve these skills.
Yeah, I am in so much awe of gymnasts. I have enough trouble just walking on just on the ground normally. Then when I see gymnasts like yourself, and I just think this is just beyond incredible. It must take so much time and focus to develop these skills to be able to learn, these amazing feats, really.
Mm.
So I guess I'm curious, how does training change from when you start to when you are doing high performance? What does a sort of a typical week look like?
Yeah, sure. If it helps as well, I'm always tripping over my feet still, so don't feel like you're the only one in that boat there. Don't stress. But you're right. It's a sport where you develop a lot of body awareness quite young. And I've always said that it's a sport where you can almost walk into any other sport and be relatively good at it. And it's hard for anyone to walk into gymnastics and be good at it. It's got so many difficult elements to it in terms of body awareness. Yeah, like I said at the start, it's very much just body weight movements, getting used to swinging, the fundamentals, handstands, obviously the one that everyone knows, but it is so prevalent across the sport and on different events. There's learning a handstand on the floor, then there's learning to swing the handstand, then there's doing a handstand on the rings where it's moving, it's variable. So they're just, again, basic examples, but it takes a lot of time to develop, and it's a lot of shaping, and it's a lot of hours in the gym, hence why it does tend to have quite a high volume for a young age. But it's about managing that as well and understanding. It's hard to do as an athlete when you're in the moment, but it's important that your coaches and your parents recognize that they are needing to balance the school load, the training load, and making sure that athletes aren't burning out too soon. But I was lucky where my parents are very conscious of this, and they were always asking questions and ensuring I was very much enjoying the sport. And I would always say, yes, 100%, this is where I want to be, this is what I want to do. So yeah, I just have very, very fond memories of being a young athlete.
Phil, do you do any training outside of the gym
Currently, or when I was an athlete?
as gymnast? Is it
Yeah.
all inside the gym, or are you doing? I mean, you talked about you don't mind a run now. Is
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
Yeah, is any of that part of
It's
a gymnast's training?
it's certainly most of it is performed within the gym. However, when you get to maybe like 15 or so, usually high performance facilities will be associated with the strength and conditioning club, and that's where you'll do your external strength and conditioning. That's like pushing weights. You have recovery facilities as well that you utilize, but I would say 90% of your training is done within the facility.
Wow. Okay.
I guess you've raised a really good point in all of that with having that support behind you through the process. And it's a bit of common knowledge, really, I think, in sport, if you've been in sport, that a lot of people do drop out in the teenage years. I was recently sort of having a closer look at that, and I think the statistic out of the US sort of sits around 70% of children quitting at around the age of 13. Was there a main motivator during those years that kept you in the sport?
I would say the relationships I made within the sport, knowing that you've got a cohort or a team that are going through the exact same things as you, and they're going through the relationship managements with their family outside of that as well, their schooling. It's obviously a juggling act, so it's certainly difficult, but it's knowing that you're going through that adolescence period together and you're all on a similar journey and you're all in it for the love of the sport. That kind of keeps everyone cemented.
Mm.
But yeah, it's certainly difficult.
Did it ever feel repetitive?
I think some sports, I would imagine that it could feel a bit repetitive, but as I touched on, gymnastics is one of those sports where there's always something more you can do. There's always something more you can learn. Effectively, it's a sport where there's so many skills to create and to perform. And to get there takes a lot of drills, a lot of different activities, a lot of different strength and conditioning, flexibility. So there's heaps of variables that you can touch on and work on just to achieve these skills and to put them in a sequence and then compete them successfully as a whole nother ballpark as well. But it's always something that you're chasing, and it's almost like an early form of addiction almost, but in a passionate way, I'd say.
Yeah, that's true, right? I guess when you talk about the addiction to it, or to any of those getting better at a skill, adding a new skill, as you put yourself further and further into elite sports, when you move into the competitive circuit, the adrenaline surge is real in competitive
Yep.
environments. Was that something that was also fueling the flame to stay in the sport? I mean, talk to us about the competition circuit of gymnastics.
Absolutely. I think I'm quite lucky in the way that some people prefer training and really dislike the competitive side and they get really anxious surrounding it. But I really like that performance side. And I don't know if that stemmed from me doing like musicals when I was younger and like being on stage and singing and whatnot, and then doing gymnastics. And I just really find that I thrived in that environment. So
Yeah.
it was really helpful for me. But it's quite daunting for sure when you put all this preparation in, and you know that gymnastics is one of those events where, or one of those sports where you get one shot. If you fall off, that's a whole mark. That's pretty much you out of the running effectively. So you've got to go start to finish, and there's no do overs. So it's really difficult in that regard.
What's been competition highlights for you?
I would say competing internationally for the first time. That was in Las Vegas, putting a new skill, triple back for the first time in an international comp. And for me, just nailing it at the end of a routine, I think I'll hold on to that forever. I've got a couple of international ones, highs and lows, but I have some great ones which have been more local, which is Australian Championships, where we won team gold in the all around. And that was alongside my best mates. And it was just great to kind of get around each other. And it was one of those competitions where there wasn't stress. We're all just like amping each other up, super hyped. And we knew what we need to go out there and do. And we all did it. And it was just great.
I love it. How old are we when we're in these comps?
This is 2016 and 2018 was when we won gold at the Australian Championships as a team. And then
Yeah.
I just turned 21 when I had my first international comp in Las Vegas. I remember because we celebrated afterwards and I was able to do so.
And Phil, are you on the comeback from a broken neck at these comps, or you haven't broken your neck yet?
Yes, I had. So that was probably, I would say, less than a year back. I competed internationally for the first time, which was amazing. So I was 19 when I broke my neck, and I was out for a good year, and I wasn't able to lift I could barely lift my dinner plate. I was in neck brace for 10 months. I had spinal surgery. So I had my C5 and C6 vertebrae dislocated. So I had to have it realigned, and I've got plates in my neck now. But from the doctors saying, look, you're definitely not going to be able to go back to gymnastics, let alone run again, to then a year later slowly come back into the sport, start back from square one almost, and then with determination get back to competing, and then competing internationally was just, I'm still amazed at it myself.
It's just so incredible. Like it's just amazing. So what was it that drove you through that time, in those low moments of going, okay, the recovery time and all of those questions that must be racing
Yeah.
through your mind? What got you through it?
I think having a mum as a sports psychologist is certainly a massive benefit.
Mm.
And I say that in the way that she wasn't having sessions with me or anything like that. It's just her natural ability to raise children with a positive mindset was a big impact for me. And so I looked at the injury as a way to then reset from my gymnastics and go, all right, let's use that as a bit of a breathing time, and then let's get back stronger than ever. And generally, when you have an injury in elite sport, you go, all right, cool. What's the growth mindset part of this now? I'm going to get really, really strong in what I can. Unfortunately, I couldn't do anything strength wise for a good portion, but it allowed me to kind of realign to what my values were in life and what I really wanted to do. And it cemented the fact that I did want to compete as an elite athlete again.
So on top of all of this, so you're going through this period of recovery, working towards this goal of getting back, and were you balancing study and working at this time? And what was the reality of
Yeah.
the time frame balancing everything?
Yeah, just prior to my neck injury, I was training full time, I was working part time, and I was studying part time as well. And I found that while doing all of those things, I sort of burnt out to a certain degree. I wasn't very happy with it all. And so just before I broke my neck, I decided I wanted to sort of step away from university. And I made that decision that, yep, I'm going to go back once I retire from the sport and really put all my eggs in that basket once that finishes. And allowed me to chase my dream. And that sort of helped me to then go, yep, this is what I definitely want to do. I'm moving forwards with it. I've got passions in the sport. I've got friends in the sport. I've got connections, and I want to see it through, and I want to see what I can achieve. So that was a big turning point for me, for sure.
Phil, you
Wow.
are evidently decisive. Like, is that how you would describe yourself, or is that us getting a summary of what is agonizingly weeks of deliberations? Or
I wouldn't articulate it that way, but I definitely appreciate hearing it. That's for sure. I very much act on emotion and how I feel, and I feel like I'm in tune with who I am and what I want to do, and so I'll follow that to the end of the earth.
yeah, right. Tell me about when you first stepped back in the gym and you're out of the neck brace, you've had spinal surgery, you've made the decision you want to come back better than ever. What's that feeling like?
It felt right, honestly. It felt that my teammates all got around me. They knew it was a big building back experience for me. I have one really fond memory where each weekend we do this thing called a sticking competition, and we go on the trampoline and we do certain skills, and you had to stick it all the way through. And you became like the winner of the week that week by doing the least amount of falls or sticking it perfectly. And it was quite recent after I returned that I ended up winning the sticking comp, and I was just like, whoa, like I'm actually like, I'm not only coming back, but I'm actually able to be at a level that I think is capable and amongst my teammates as well. So that was a
How
shining moment too.
good. Do you know what I find interesting in the things you've talked about is I see gymnastics as quite an individual sport, and everything you've said is contra to that.
Absolutely. It really is. It's individual in the way that you take accountability for your own training and you work within your own parameters. But especially when it comes to doing a team event where, each of your teammates is counting on you to add to the team score at the end, that's where the real like passion comes in, and that's where everyone recognizes what their roles are. But again, like it's inevitable that when you train 30 hours a week with mates that you go through adolescence together, that there's going to be an output of just respect and compassion with each other and wanting to see each other thrive.
So good.
I think for me, what's coming through very clearly is the mental strength that you have. And a lot of players, they say whichever percentage ratio you want to go with there, but a lot of it is mental strength. And it's very clear that you have so much mental strength through this comeback time. What I am curious about from an athlete perspective is how long did it take to regain trust in what you're doing? So trust in your body, trust that you could perform these skills, perform these tasks, and trust in your
Yeah,
body.
yeah. I was very conscious going into it that I didn't want this injury to define me, and I wanted to get back on the horse, so to speak. I think I had a healthy amount of caution, recognizing that this is a difficult sport, anything can happen at any moment, but also not letting that put a ceiling on what my achievements could be as well. So I did everything in a safe manner. Gymnastics is one of those sports where it's very, very progressive. So it's very easy to see where your pathway and what your goals are and track how you're doing. But I think that definitely helps. Knowing that I wanted to go all in.
Phil, you said I didn't want this injury to define me. As an athlete, right, injuries are pretty well inevitable. I mean, it wouldn't have been the only injury you endured during your gymnastics career, I'm sure, though by
Yeah,
far the most significant. But I think we can all recognize that injury gets in our way. But it truly reaches a point, I think, for athletes where injury can become defining
yeah,
and it can get in the way and it can stop us from doing what we thought the next step was going to be for us. And I got to tell you that a broken neck at 19 with spinal surgery,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um uh, I reckon at 19 you've been in the sport for 14 years. I reckon there'd be plenty of people who would have said that's probably time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone as well in any instance, because I have friends or I know people who've done the exact same injury as me, and they weren't as fortunate. And it's hard for me to go, yeah, look, like I'm successful in this way or not successful in this way. Like I just was a guy who was fortunate in the cards that I was dealt and that I had the capacity and the mental and physical ability to want to come back. So that makes a big difference. But I recognize that everyone's just doing the best they can with the cards they're dealt in that instance.
Do you know how many people say I'm fortunate because I broke my neck? I'll give you the answer. I'd say probably close to zero. That it is
Yeah.
just your mindset's phenomenal, Phil. I feel like you're the person that everyone wants to spend time with just to see if it's contagious. And and I think
More than happy to help.
studies show that it is. I imagine you've been a heck of an asset to your teammates. What was your role in the team? When your squads would travel, where did you fit?
Yeah, look, I was definitely an all-round gymnast, which means that I competed on all 6 events. So you got floor, pommel horse, rings, vault, parallel bars, and high bar. I wasn't anywhere near as good as a lot of my teammates. They were fantastic, but I certainly brought my part to the team in terms of being able to be a steady competitor. But also, I feel like my value was really in getting around the team and encouraging the team and being passionate and showing my leadership in those sorts of ways. So I like to think I was valued in that way.
I don't doubt it for a second, Phil. When I think about male gymnasts, I don't have very obvious pictures that come to mind. I feel like gymnastics for an outsider's lens has been a very female dominated sport. And I think, statistically, I think that is, well, I know that to be correct. The stats suggest
Correct.
it's over 70% female athletes in gymnastics. Tell me, when you're going through those teenage years and boys trying to do a boy's life and all of the challenges that come with just being a teenager, whether you're male or female, what is it like to be a male gymnast in a female dominated sport? Because we hear a lot about the other side of sport. We hear a lot about male dominated sports and how it
Yeah.
feels to be female in that space. I'd be so keen to hear your lens of discovering those differences as you get older and become more aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was at school, originally it was like, oh, there's this kid who's doing gymnastics, must be quite like a feminine kind of person. It's like not particularly. Like I just would go out there and then suddenly perform a backflip on the field, and I know I'm everyone's mates again. So it's just like that not understanding what it takes as well. Like I think it's very obvious when you play cricket, when you play footy, which I also did as well. And swimming, it's easy to understand what that looks like, and you have references on TV of what that looks like as well. Not many kids at my school understood really what gymnastics was. It was very much a perception that it was just throwing ribbons around and whatnot. And no disrespect to rhythmic gymnastics either, but they're very different sports within themselves. Even the men's and female code is very, very different, different apparatus. So there's quite a disparity there. But yeah, I think everyone just respected the journey and knew that, hey, here's Phil, the athlete, and he knows what he wants to go out there and achieve. And let's just see how he goes.
For those teenage years, and was there any one legend of gymnastics or any one inspiring figure, or did you just very organically sort of fall in love with the sport?
I would say I was definitely prompted early on from my mum putting me in, and I just loved it so much. But then mum also had Foxtel, and there was some international competitions that were on weekly, and there would be like the World Cup circuit. And I had a big respect for Marian Dragulescu, who's a recently retired athlete. Has some fantastic vaulting skills, and he was someone that I always looked up to and would follow. There were some amazing Japanese gymnasts as well. Just their twisting mechanics and their form was phenomenal. Kohei Uchimura is another one who's more recent, and probably obviously everyone looks up to Simone Biles as the queen of women's gymnastics, but there's always someone in the next generation pushing the sport to that next boundary. I think when you look in the early 80s, it was very much like light, petite, small gymnasts, particularly in the female side, who were just really perfect in what they did. And now that the sport has become more difficult, both in the men's and the women's side, the body's changed to be able to develop and perform these skills. and so has the longevity of athletes in the sport just to be able to get to that stage. So it's a never evolving sport, and that's why I love it so much, and so many people can be a part of it.
Mm, when you retire, um, I mean, first tell me how you knew it was time
Yeah,
to retire. But I'm also curious, Phil, when a gymnast retires, do you just stop?
Mm.
yeah. It's a very interesting question, and it's different for everyone, obviously. I was fortunate enough to have a bit of a fairy tale ending, which stemmed from a bit of a more difficult side. I had the decision in 2019 or so that I wanted to retire after competing at the London Open that year. And so I went, yep, sweet, I'm going to put all my training ability into this. I just went all out, super strength, really focused on being a high performing athlete in and out of the gym. And then I even got my dad to come fly up and watch the competition in London as well. And I think I just had that extra pressure on myself. And also I recognized that when you just train in your own environment, you get so used to your equipment and your apparatus and your setting that it can be a little bit daunting when you go elsewhere and it's not quite right. The apparatus might be a little bit different. You're not used to it. And there's that added pressure of knowing that I want to make this my last competition. And so it didn't go as favorably as I'd like it to, and it sort of left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. And I was like, I don't really want to have that as the ending. And so I made the decision that, hey, look, there's a competition that's every year. It's the High Performance Centre Invitational. It's just a local competition, nothing special. But I thought, hey, how good would it be if I could finish where it all started effectively? Like my career really accelerated when I turned 14 and started training there. And imagine if I can finish it there as well. And so I said, 6 months away. Let's let's practice like that's your end goal, and don't put any pressure on yourself. Just have fun with it. And in doing so, when it came to the day, I just had one of the best competitions of my life. I had all my family and friends around, and yeah, it got to my last event and the floor, which is my favorite event as well. I had all of the athletes run onto the floor afterwards and had me jumping up and down. It was just such
Oh,
an amazing video. I'll have to show it with you and share it to you as well. But
yes.
it's something that's I'll look back on forever. It's honestly my favorite video of all time. And then it was done. So it was like, yeah, that's a great finish. I had no desire to want to get back. I didn't really want to get back and then think I had stones left unturned. And then I actually had dreams later on where I was like, I'm still back in it, and I felt like anxious that I was still back in it. It's like, why would
Um,
you come back and not leave it there? But thankfully, I was able to fill that sort of loss of identity with academics. So, as I said, I wanted to go back to university and study once I retired. So I put all of my mental energy into that. I had a girlfriend at the time who was working, and this was during COVID. So while she was working 9 to 5 from home, I was studying 9 to 5 from home as well. And that sort of helped me along the way in terms of
mm,
processing that loss of the sport.
What an
wow.
incredible, you're not wrong, fairy tale ending there for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I if somebody else is going through that at the moment, that decision that, okay, I'm thinking about retiring, I'm thinking about stopping. Is there any advice that you would give to them?
I'd say it certainly has to come from you. Don't let anyone dictate when you should finish up. It really does need to come from you. I had people on the outside saying, "Oh, when do you think you'll finish up?" or you should finish up for X, Y, Z reasons. But I was very much like, no, I've spent a good 20 years building this up. I want to make it on my terms. And thankfully I did. And it was amazing. But look, I recognize that not everyone gets that fairy tale ending. Just realize that it's important to have a really strong network of family and friends around you. Do things that you're passionate about outside of sport. That's why it's really important to have either a dual career or dual passions while you're training as an elite athlete. Have something to fall back on or at least lean on during that period. I had a great network of friends, obviously, like I touched on, and going for runs and doing things outside of gymnastics that kept me fit was a good way to keep mental clarity as well.
Mm,
I thought that was
mm,
a really critical thing you said earlier as well with your academics, is with that period of transition, finding another drive as well, finding another passion, finding another interest, finding a new sort of venture in a way.
identity.
Identity,
Mm,
yeah, and whether you think it's gonna be your identity or not, just something else that can drive you. And I I just think that
Yeah.
that's amazing that you were able to have that sort of ready to go, and you knew that from years prior as well, withholding the academics until this moment.
yeah, I think it's important to not retire and then go, all right, well, now what? It's important to pre-plan and have somewhat of a trajectory to follow.
Yeah, so true, so true. And Phil, you've not been out of the sport for an incredibly long time, but you've certainly been out long enough that you've had time to reflect on and you've established your own career. What do you think has changed for athlete development now that didn't exist when you were there?
There's certainly, as much as it helped me having a mum in sports psychology, there's certainly more of a shift towards that sort of support. And also nutrition is a big one too. Usually on the athletes who go to the IAS, the Australian Institute of Sport, they'll get sort of sessions or clinics with nutritionists who will sort of talk about fueling for performance, which is certainly really important. And it's really difficult because a lot of elite athletes, particularly in individual sports, they're living below the poverty line, like they're living paycheck to paycheck. And so to say, you should be eating this just to fuel themselves. When they say, look, I can't even afford that, it's really difficult. So I'm a big advocate for trying to alleviate those financial pressures as much as possible. But nutrition is certainly a big one. Mental health is certainly a big one. Strength and conditioning has existed for quite some time, but in the early 2000s, that was sort of quite new. But everyone's doing it now and recognizing the increase in performance capacity it has, the injury prevention capacity it has. So yeah, I think it's now just really defining what your goals are and then achieving them step by step.
Yeah. And now, where do we find Phil Stewart these days?
These days, I'm at the high performance program and at Gymnastics Victoria as the SGC high performance coordinator. So again, like I touched on, a lot of what I do outside of the sport is giving back to the next generation of emerging athletes. And really it's just helping them with the resources they need. So my role is coordinating those resources from physios to strength and conditioning, to anything from sponsorships or anything that could be financial aid for them as well. So just helping them compete as successfully and happily as possible.
We're having Phil come back and chat to us about his journey through coaching, his role now in advocacy, and all things gymnastics past Phil's athlete career. Anyone who feels stuck in their almost phase, we hope that Phil's story has given you a reminder that your worth isn't tied to your title and that your life after elite sport can be just as meaningful, even when it looks different. Phil, thank you so much for being with us today. We have so loved this conversation with you. We're excited to do round two. We've touched today on the way that your mindset influences people around you. And I think part two with you is just really unpacking that, the way that you approach your athletes, the way that you approach life and people around you and coaching. And most importantly, welcome to the Almost Pro crew.
Thank you so much for having me and thank you for the kind words. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Phil. To anyone listening from home, the gym, or on the go, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow and subscribe to stay on the Almost Pro journey.
And if you've got a story to share or know someone who does, we would love to hear from you. Head over to our Spotify, YouTube, or social media pages at Almost Pro Podcast to get in touch.
Thanks, Phil.
See you,
Thanks,
team.
Phil. Up next, for those watching today's episode on YouTube or Spotify, here's an exclusive look at Phil Stewart's incredible triple back. If you're listening on audio, you can jump over to YouTube or Spotify at Almost Pro Podcast to watch.
That